Have you ever heard of the imposter syndrome? If not, today I'm going to explain what the imposter syndrome is. I'm going to explain some signs of it so you know what it is and how it's affecting you in your life and the impact that it's having in your life. And I'm going to give you some techniques that you can use immediately to combat it, to fight it off so that you don't fall prey to this very common syndrome. So let's talk about the imposter syndrome, which is a term coined originally around the end of the 70s, around 1978. And it's a term, it's not a diagnosis, so I don't want you to think that this is a mental health diagnosis. It's just a term that refers to a bunch of signs or symptoms. So we call this a syndrome, okay? We call it imposter syndrome. And what is it? Well, do you ever have feelings of being a fraud? Do you ever feel like you are not the person that people think you are? Do you ever feel like your success is mostly due to external factors like luck or family genes or situations you are put in instead of your hard work and your own abilities? These are all signs of imposter syndrome. Why is this important? Well, it's really important because in my work, I've seen so many people who fall prey to this. And if this is not treated, if you don't work on this, if you don't work to overcome the imposter syndrome, it can lead to other things down the road, real verifiable diagnoses such as anxiety and depression. And so it's not worth that. Now, that being said, this is a very common diagnosis. I see imposter syndrome all the time in my office. In fact, I see it in a lot of high-performing people, a lot of high-performing achievers and athletes, CEOs, business executives, you name it. And so I think the important part is to understand the symptoms. So one big one is you do not have an accurate view of yourself. Despite your training, despite your education levels, the way you see yourself does not jive with the way the world sees you. For instance, there are some days, myself, I went to school for 23 years from first grade on. That's a lot of years. Just thinking about that. So I went to school for all those years, and there are some days in my office where I have feelings of being totally out of touch. I feel like I'm just not providing the services that I need for my clients. I feel like they're going to find out that I'm a fraud, that I somehow scammed my way through all those years of school and just slid by, just barely made it. They felt sorry for me, so they gave me my doctorate, my bachelor's, my master's, and my doctorate. And so I'll have days where I feel like that, and I feel like my clients are going to be finding me out. I feel like I should be paying them on days like that. That would be an example of something that could go under imposter syndrome. And by the way, everybody suffers from this syndrome from time to time. I know I do, and I know a lot of the people that I work with that are successful, people that I hang out with that are successful. We've all had moments where we fall prey to this for short periods of time. So that's one example, an accurate view of yourself in your training. Another one would be to attribute success to external factors. So a lot of successful people, when you talk to them, they'll say, well, I got lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. Things like that. That's another sign of this syndrome. Another one would be a constant fear that you're not living up to expectations. So there's expectations from family, there's expectations from your culture, there's expectations from your work, there's expectations all over the place. And so this constant dread that I'm not living up to the expectations of me from whomever, myself or others, that's another sign. Another sign, you sabotage yourself, you sabotage your success all the time. Have you ever done this in a relationship? It's going way too well, and none of your past relationships went well, and this one's going really well. So why don't you just sabotage it, right? Why don't you just not show up for the next date? Why don't you just do something to push your potential partner away, right? We call that self-sabotage. That comes out of a deep-rooted fear that you're not going to be good enough, that they're going to discover that there's something wrong with you. So what do? You sabotage your success ahead of time. Before they can get to you, before they can reject you, you do that to yourself. So these are all signs of imposter syndrome. And next I want to talk a little bit about where it comes from. A lot of times we come from high functioning and high achieving families, and we start to learn that failure is not an option. We start to feel that we need to be successful because our parents were successful, or because our brothers and our sisters were successful. So it can come from family expectations. It can come from a personal high, a perfectionism almost. You have high beliefs, high standards for yourself, and you never quite feel like you can live up to them. You set them so high that it's almost impossible to live up to them. And if you do live up to them, all you're going to feel is relief. So it can come from your own standards, your own perfectionistic standards. It can also come from anxiety. Maybe you just have anxiety in general. And so what that can do is that can feed into the negative self-talk that becomes a part of imposter syndrome, where you're constantly doubting yourself, where you're constantly predicting pain, you're constantly predicting anguish for yourself. So anxiety in general can also be one of the reasons that you're forming imposter syndrome. And a last one can be the norms. They're cultural norms that you live within, the societal norms that you live in. For instance, I have a lot of clients that were dental students. And when you look at their family of origin, they have parents that are dentists, and they have grandpas and grandmas that are dentists, right? So not only do we have the family expectations that you're going to get into the dental business, right? What you have is you have these societal norms. I need to be successful. My parents are dentists, and I need to be successful. I need to make money. I need to have 2 cars. I need to have 2.5 kids and live in the suburbs with a white picket fence. These are norms, right? These are expectations, either expressed or not expressed, from society around us. And it can be society in general. It can be our friend group. It can be our family. These are all parts of culture, different levels of culture. And they all have norms that go with them. So we take on these norms as if they become our own expectations. And that can be burdensome. My first idea, and this is a very important one because seldom do I meet someone who's very good at this. Taking compliments, letting things sink in that are good, celebrating your own successes. Very few people I've met are very good at that. Why? Well, I think it's partly because of the negativity bias in our brain. As I've said in other videos, our brain is wired. This is from evolution. Our brain is wired to overpredict things as painful, for negative things to stick in our brain much more easily than positive things. So even a hint of criticism sticks in your brain versus a full-fledged compliment from someone you love. What do we do with those? We usually discard them, right? It's like water off a duck's back. We don't let it sink in at all. So one way to combat the development of imposter syndrome is to celebrate your success. Learn to take compliments. How do you do that, right? Well, when someone gives you a genuine compliment, learn to say thank you and let it sink in. They mean well. They're trying to say something nice to you. They're giving you a compliment. Don't undo that. Don't invalidate the other person's opinion. If they think you did well, that's a nice thing. Let it sink in. Even if you don't agree with it, let it sink in and say, hey, it's nice that somebody else is seeing something positive in me. If you let it sink in, if you can start celebrating your own successes along the way, you're gonna get better at combating these feelings of imposter syndrome. Another way to do it is to monitor your self-talk. Self-talk is the way we chatter, the way we chit-chat with ourselves on a daily basis. And it's not usually audible, so we don't do this in public. If you do, that's a sign of something else, and we'll talk about that later. I'm just kidding, just kidding. So the way you talk to yourself, you need to monitor it. We need to monitor and be aware, right? Because awareness is the beginning of changing anything. You can't change anything unless you're aware. So we need to be aware of how we talk to ourselves. So be very careful. And when you notice that you're being negative, that you're talking negatively about yourself, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, this isn't, they don't understand who I really am. When we say negative things like that, I'll never get it, I'll never do it, I'm so lucky, or I'm so unlucky. Start monitoring that so you notice the damage that you're doing on a moment-by-moment basis in your own brain. Very important. Third way to combat imposter syndrome is to share your feelings with other people. This is a very important one because what you're going to discover is that a lot of other people feel like imposters too. A lot of other people have similar feelings and similar experiences to you, but you're not going to know that unless you actually sit down and talk to them. Once you do, you're going to feel better knowing that there are other people in the world going through the same things that you are going through. Tip number 4, I want you to cultivate self-compassion. Now, how do you do this? Well, I think it's very important that we treat ourselves like we would one of our own children. If you are a parent, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not a parent yet, you'll know, you'll understand. Now, why talk to yourself in a way that you would not talk to your children? If your child makes a mistake, would you call them stupid? Would you say that they are inept? Would you ask them, why are you always screwing up? Of course not. You would have some compassion and you would try to talk them through when they got upset. You try to talk them through it so that they don't feel like they are a failure. Every good parent knows this. So we need to do that to the inner child and ourselves. And I know that sounds corny, but deep inside all of us is a kid that just wants to be accepted, that wants to play, that wants to have fun and live life. Have some self-compassion. Go easy on yourself. You're not always going to be perfect. You're not always going to have the answers. You're going to screw up. And if you're like me, you screw up all the time. I screw up in ways I'm not even aware of right now. You're gonna make mistakes. That's okay. Go easy on yourself. Just like you would your own children. Now, my last tip for combating imposter syndrome is simply acceptance. Acceptance is an interesting term because a lot of my clients don't understand it until I really explain it. And I explain acceptance is you're not condoning what's happening to you in your life. You're accepting it as a reality. So acceptance is not liking. I don't like that it rains here in March in Ohio and that the weather changes moment to moment. I don't like it, but I accept it because I live here in Ohio. And if I don't want to accept it, I can move somewhere else. So acceptance means you allow reality to sink in, even if you don't like it. So I don't like that I screw up all the time. I don't like that I forget things. I don't like that I say stupid things. I don't like how I look on video. But I accept it. It's part of what I do. It's part of being human. It's part of being a professional. It's part of being a psychologist. It's part of being human. After all, we're all in this together, and we're all doing the best we can with what we have. So if you want to fight off imposter syndrome, go back, watch this video again, so you know what it is, you know how it shows up, and then use some of these tips. You don't have to use them all, but use some of these tips so that it doesn't develop in your life, in your work, and in your family life. I'm Dr. Leif Smith. Thanks for watching again. I really appreciate you being a part of my community, and I will see you in the next video.